Right beside me is Bob Chapman of the internationalforecaster.com. All right, Bob, we've got China lowering the credit rating for the U.S. government and the EU. We've got open build-up for war with Iran. I've got this Bloomberg 15-page report where every major insurance company has had the government rules change where they can take dead veterans' insurance money and not give it to people. I mean, it's like we're living in the Twilight Zone, Bob.
It certainly is, and it just shows you that there's nothing there to protect the American public. Within this new financial regulation bill that they passed, the SEC is no longer subject to the Freedom of Information Act, the FOIA as it's known. That means that everything they do is a secret. Now, in there, the SEC only brings civil charges against people for whatever, usually within the brokerage and in the industrial and service industries. And they have always had secret testimony that they wouldn't divulge. But now it will be probably like a court that was held during the 12th century before the Magna Carta. And it's very, very, very bad. But it just is an example of people not having any rights. And this is what this is propelling towards.
Well, I've got that headline, and you and Ron Paul and Judge Napolitano have read the bill that's now law, and you've stated it gives the Federal Reserve total control over the economy with a private board made up of the very leaders of the banks that robbed us. And there's the Fox News headline from Fox Business. We'll put that back on screen. SEC says new financial regulation law exempts it from public disclosure. That way, next time somebody warns them about Bernie Madoff or Ken Lay for 11 or 12 years, they don't even get criticized. No one ever even knows because they are literally all the former people of these criminal groups. And so that's why the insurance companies say, we'll just stop paying the death benefits on dead soldiers. Ha, ha, ha!
Diabolical. And you know, I gotta give you three instances because I've been in the brokerage business and close to the financial markets for over 50 years. Number one, about 4 months ago, Berkshire Hathaway was found guilty of accounting fraud, $300 million. And I think the fraud was against the U.S. government, but I'm not sure. I didn't read the internals. And they were fined $100 million. So it was worth it for them to do that because they kept $200 million. And then along came Goldman Sachs, and they sold $5 billion or more worth of collateralized debt obligations, which are bonds with mortgages inside them. They were hauled before the SEC for a number of violations in that genre, and they paid a fine of $550 million. So they stole, essentially, $5 billion or more and paid a fine of $500 million, and they kept $4.5 billion. Now, the third one is today, which happened yesterday. Citigroup was fined $75 million. Now, they sold $50 billion worth of CDOs, which are now worth about $15 billion. And that's all they get fined was $75 million.
And we have all their own internal emails and documents. They knew it was pure worthless crud. They had fake insurance companies certified as AAA, undermining the entire financial system, and they get away with it. And
nobody goes to jail. And they're all interconnected. They all belong to the Illuminati. They control our government from behind the scenes. They control and own the Federal Reserve. And that's why Dr. Roberts, as well as Ron Paul and myself, and you as well, have said that this is tyrannical. People who don't have any idea yet what's going to happen, and it's going to be very nasty.
Because they've committed millions of crimes, why not commit millions of even bigger crimes? They've shown that. Have you ever seen fraud in history that gets anywhere close to this?
No, not on this colossal basis, so to speak. And it's ongoing. And again, I come back to what you were speaking of earlier. with another war, or let's say with Iran. And McGovern and Dr. Roberts and myself and you agree that there's an excellent possibility of that happening, but the justification and the money isn't there. They're going to do it anyway. These people are crazy.
And all of us are in the middle. I want to come back and get into gold, how they're manipulating that, what you see happening in the short, mid, and long term of the economy, and then phone calls for Bob Chapman, 1-800-259-9231. Quick questions or points. We'll get Bob to comment on it. It's all coming up straight ahead. Infowars.com, prisonplanet.tv. People can call a toll-free number, and they can get a free complimentary copy of the International Forecaster, the hard copy, or have it emailed to them. It's 30, 40, 50 pages, depending on which issue it is. It comes out twice a week digital, several times a month, hard copy. Give folks that number if they want to get a copy of the International Forecaster.
Now, that toll-free number is 877-479-8178. That's 877-479-8178. And don't forget, Ted Anderson at Midas is offering a special, and you get yourself one of those French francs, and you get a free 1-year subscription. And that's the best deal I've ever seen. And so I think you should take advantage of it if you're interested in the publication, but you can still get a free copy.
That's right. He sells francs at the lowest I've seen anywhere, a fifth of an ounce. And then you get a $159 yearly subscription, either digital or mailed to you when you call as well. Give that number out one more time.
Well, that number is 877-479-8178. That's 877-479-8178, toll free.
Okay, I want to go to Mike, Steve, Kevin, Mark, and a couple other callers. And I know you love taking calls, Bob. But after we take some calls, what are some of the other issues you want to get into today?
Well, I think you mentioned earlier the situation with the gold and silver market, also the stock market. We've already covered some terrific issues. I saw today that, well, I guess it's yesterday now, that as I had predicted earlier, one of the major cities in Greece has gone bankrupt. No, I rephrase that. One of the major cities in Greece has defaulted on some of their loans, and that's Piraeus, which is the main port in the country, which is fairly close to Athens. And so it may have begun over there.
And we saw the euro just a month ago was supposedly going to collapse, but then the Bilderberg said we can't allow that. And then Merkel wouldn't let the brokerage firms come in and manipulate their currencies. Is there a split within the elite right now?
Yes, there is, at least on that measure, and that happens from time to time. They're a greedy bunch, and they always want more money than the next guy. And she did the right thing. There's absolutely no question. And the euro got down to 118.75. Yesterday it closed over 130, and so that's quite a recovery. I would imagine somewhere along the line it will solidify. The consumer confidence in Germany is very strong because they're big exporters, and that less expensive euro is going to make their exports probably at least 10% cheaper than they normally would.
But the implosion of all these fiat currencies has got to go somewhere, the way this system's set up. And some of our economics guests we've had on the last week are saying they see it migrating to London or Tokyo next. What do you say?
Well, that could happen in part. What I thought you were referring to when you asked that question was the currencies and where people are going to go to. And of course, the main reason that gold is higher than it is, and this is something that people overlook, except some professionals, and that is, for the last 15 months, gold has been competing with the dollar as for the position of the preeminent currency in the world. People who have currencies, all of them, are gravitating back to gold because they know it doesn't owe anybody anything. And you're going to see this strengthen as time goes on. not the answer to the question, but
No. I mean, it was just an open. No. That is my question. So I mean, you did answer it. Did gold going down a little bit have to do with an entire year's market being secretly sold by the IMF and World Bank 2 weeks ago?
We don't know what they did. We will find out in time, but there was a lot of selling. But you got to remember, things go up and things go down. Stocks, golds, commodity, etc. And so it's not unhealthy to have a 100-point correction. Sure, it's painful if you're in the long side of the market, but then again, it's not so painful if you've got money to do more buying or you're making an initial investment. You know, like the French roosters, just as an example that Ted uses in his business. They're around, don't quote me on this, I'm not a coin dealer, but around $265. A year from now, they might be double that. And so what would you rather have, a rooster or a dollar or a Federal Reserve note? And, of course, the answer is pretty simple.
Well, gold is up $13.80 today. When do you see it running back up to the levels it was at 2 months ago?
It's in the process of doing so.
Okay.
And, I thought that by the end of the year we could get 1650, and I think that's still very doable. It might be a little bit more difficult. It's hard to say. I think a great deal of the selling that you've seen that occurred in the gold market occurred in the futures market as opposed to physical selling. And the reason why is there's a record and close to record amount of contracts being traded. Wednesday was a good example of that. They set a record in gold contracts. And that means that there was a lot of selling going on, but this is paper selling. It's different than the physical market.
And that's what GATA's lawsuits and investigation deals with, is how they use the paper market to manipulate the physical.
Yes, and they're using leverage, which they're not supposed to do, which is illegal. And there is testimony from a professional in London on the LBMA that the leverage is about 100 to 1. And there's another report I saw by Adrian Douglas, and he had it pegged at a minimum of 45 to 1.
So do you call that naked? I mean, they're not even really investing. They're just manipulating.
That's right. It's naked. It's just like a big casino. And the U.S. government has told them, hey, go do it. We'll cover you.
Total.
I mean, it's like J.P. Morgan Chase controlling the silver market. It's illegal. But the government's behind them. Look at the lawsuit several years ago that was brought forward by another coin dealer in the United States. And in the testimony, Barrick Gold said, well, we were selling gold forward under instructions from the United States government. It's right in discovery.
It's just incredible how rigged things are. Let's take some phone calls. Mike in Pennsylvania, you're on the air.
Yeah. The quote by Andrew Jackson when he was putting up with the same struggles in the 1830s of Thomas Biddle, the same Ben Bernanke. You are a den of vipers, and by eternal God, I will rout you out. And we have to get behind the Secret of Oz's idea of debt-free money issued interest-free by the federal government, not the Federal Reserve, and where state banks rule. And I wanted your comment.
Well, no, I mean, I agree with you. That's the power of Congress. That's in the Constitution, that the People's Congress chooses our monetary system, not a private Federal Reserve that's as federal as Federal Express. Bob?
Agreed, but you've got to remember, we don't want another U.S. note without any backing. You've got to have gold or silver or both backing that U.S. government-produced currency that you're talking about. It's extremely important because you'll just be like every other fiat currency in the world, and the name will change from Federal Reserve notes to U.S. notes. That's not good enough. We have to have something tangible behind that new currency that the gentleman is referring to.
Mike, I appreciate your call. The bottom line is this.